hear to what they are going to say and try to reflect their concerns and goals into the final decisions the international organizations are going to take. Secondly, NGOs are very important and very good in the sense that we have to learn as the humanity when we try to make a decision, how decisions are consensus, based on the consensus we reach. So far, I think many decisions or the majority of decisions have been made on simple majority. That was, I think, maybe good for the 20th century. But for the 21st century, decisions made on simple majority are not enough. We have to learn how to make decisions based on consensus of everybody who is interested in that decision or in solving out that problem. So NGOs are very good in this sense, so that we reach together with the NGOs a consensus about goals we try to reach. I was very actively working with the United Nations when I was the Prime Minister of Mongolia and then the head of state, trying to achieve MDGs. In fact, in Mongolia, we have tried to go through Parliament to make a special decision on promoting MDGs being fulfilled in Mongolia. We even added one more point, provision, plus, so 8 MDG goals, MDGs and plus 1 in Mongolia, about strengthening democratic institutions in my country. But so we tried to work very closely with the NGOs to reach MDGs. And unfortunately, I see many countries which are not able to reach MDGs. So this again raised the question of how we do we find the right mechanism and what we do if goals are not reached.
Thank you.
So this is a very important thing we have to think when we try to bring in NGOs into decision-making process.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly, I have to answer the question about the Goldson Report and Israel's nuclear weapons. On the Goldson Report, I just have a simple criterion, which is, does it advance or retard the likelihood of progress between Israel and the Palestinians? And I believe after its publication, it makes progress more difficult, not easier. On Israel's nuclear weapons, this is a concern I know in the region, but as I travel around and talk to leaders of the Gulf region, they never mention that. They're worried about Iran's nuclear weapons. And I'd also say that a difference between those two countries is only one of them talks about turning one of its neighbors into a cinder, and it isn't Israel. On the Gs, I would just say this quickly. I think the G8, and I was curious people calling it the G7, it's the G8. I think it's out of gas. I think that it really has very little energy left except to produce endless communiques, which could probably be used to get terrorists to tell their secrets if they had to read through the whole document. The G20 is too big already for serious decision-making. There will be no G2 because the United States and China have such different strategic objectives in Asia. We have the UN Security Council, and if I just submit to you, if I had to think of one reform that is most urgent, it is a reform of the United Nations Security Council. We have it. It's there. It was created to deal with the globe's problems. It's now dysfunctional for a variety of reasons that we've discussed. And it needs urgently to be reformed, including adding new permanent members, and even thinking of the unthinkable over the long run, which is an end to the national veto over the long run. and that the reform of the Security Council would take, among other things, sustained American leadership. I'm not optimistic that's going to happen anytime soon.
Okay. Monsieur, un petit peu. Oui, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, monsieur le modérateur. Juste une phrase pour alimenter notre réflexion. L'immense différence entre l'après-Première Guerre mondiale, l'après-Deuxième Guerre mondiale et aujourd'hui, c'est que dans les deux premiers cas, ce sont les vainqueurs qui ont créé un système, bon ou mauvais, mais ils n'ont pas eu à discuter avec beaucoup de monde. Ils ont imposé leur système, ils ont décidé tout seuls, à 2, 3, 4. C'est la première fois que le monde entier est confronté à la question de s'organiser collectivement, sans vainqueur ni vaincu, avec en plus un nombre de partenaires qui n'a jamais existé avant. Je dis ça pour qu'on soit indulgent par rapport aux difficultés extraordinaires que nous rencontrons pour organiser mieux le monde.
Merci. I am going to make an effort to get us back on schedule. So I'm going to say a few words in summary before I thank the panel. As a moderator, I'm struck perhaps by three rather simple things. One, in a sense, this is still probably too much a European-American debate. And though often the words are the same, though sometimes in different languages, I think we speak differently about different words. They have different meanings. Partly it's because the Americans in some ways still run the world or think they do. And in part because, though it is a multipolar world, it's a terribly messy one. And one wonders if the lack of authority makes the world slightly more dangerous. The second point that strikes me here is simply we have the United Nations, but everyone is trying to find institutions that actually avoid the United Nations because there is this very strong sense that the United Nations simply doesn't work. And whether it's a reform of the Security Council itself or the IMF or the gee-whiz, whatever we call it, it seems to me we should understand what we're doing, which is we're trying to find replacements that are functional and efficient for a great idea that probably doesn't work. And the third thing I think of, simply as an American who lives in Europe, is for all the discussion of the alteration of global architecture, we're about to have a new European president, presumably, and a new European High Representative for Foreign Affairs, which will make about 77 Europeans in every room in every international organization. And I think at some point, the European Union really does have to come to grips with whether it keeps its national vetoes in all these institutions, whether it, at the IMF, 8 countries with the same currency all have to have a seat and say the same thing, or whether Europe, like America too, will actually put commitment behind its words of sharing responsibility to the larger world. So thank you to the panel for their discipline. Thank you to you for your patience and your questions. And onward. Thanks.